Focus on Abilities is brought to you by Tier Memorial Herman, redefining rehabilitation, removing barriers, re-enabling independence. In the ILRU Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Welcome to Focus on Abilities, a program about issues affecting the lives of people with disabilities. I'm Lex Frieden. I'll be your host for today's program. I'm professor at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston. Today we have two outstanding guests, and I'll introduce them right after we ask this question, the question which we'll answer before the end of today's program. How many on-street parking spots that are accessible are there in downtown Houston? In downtown Houston, how many on-street accessible parking spots are there? So we'll talk about that and a variety of other parking-related issues pertaining to people with disabilities in just a minute. But first, I want to introduce our guest today, and Tina Williams. You're here from the Houston Commission on Disability. Welcome to Focus on Abilities.
Thank you.
Dan Pagel, you're with the City of Houston. What exactly is your title?
I'm the Deputy Director of Parking Management.
Okay, that sounds auspicious. What does that mean you do?
I manage all of the on-street and public surface lot parking functions within the City of Houston.
Okay, Tina, your role with the commission, you told me you're a first-term member.
This is my first term, and I am a commissioner.
What all does the commission work on?
Anything that has something to do with making the lives of those who live with disabilities fair and just compatible with regular lifestyle.
So you were appointed to this position by the mayor, right?
I was.
And all the members are reporting to the mayor and developing a number of issues, including parking. Is that?
That is correct.
So is parking one of the bigger issues you've had to deal with since you've been a member of the commission?
It is.
What brought it to your attention?
Well, basically, one of the commissioners was going to park, and she had problems with people parking in the parking positions that are waiting for others, like to come out, or people who don't have disabilities parking in those places.
So, is that a problem you all have discussed very much?
We have.
Over a period of weeks, I guess.
It comes up. It comes up frequently.
Does it come up from the members or also from people who are giving testimony in the open meeting?
We have public comment, and those are coming up in public comment. And sometimes we get emails.
Do people get angry about it?
Yes, people get angry about it.
And is it mainly because they can't find parking, or they feel like people are using the spaces who shouldn't be?
Both. There are those who use the spaces who don't have placards or who don't have any type of disability. Like I said before, they're waiting, or you always hear it's going to be a minute or two, and I'm coming right back out. But that's taking away from someone who actually needs that spot.
So, Don, from your perspective, when you're attuned to parking all the time, but when did you become focused on this issue of disability parking, abuse of the placards, and so on?
Well, the city's been working on this problem for really a number of years, and have tried a few times to make some changes that would help address this issue. But it really wasn't until recently, with a great partnership with the Houston Commission on Disabilities, that we were able to put some new policy in place to try and help address this issue.
So the city actually has a policy which may or may not be unique. I mean, I'm curious to know about that. But up until now, people with disabilities who have placards in their car or the the license plate that identifies them as having a disability can park in on-street parking in Houston and stay there as long as they wish without paying. And that was a kind of an accommodation I think the city developed a number of years ago.
Right. In as far back as 2003, 2005 or so, the number of on-street accessible parking spaces was not really up to standard. If you take the number of spaces that we have in downtown for on-street parking, which is approximately 4,200 spaces, and you take the ADA rules around how many parking spaces you should have for accessible parking, that number is somewhere in the 50 to 60 range based upon those rules. We had about 40 some odd, 45 or so. And so in an effort probably to be friendly and helpful to the community, we were not really enforcing those rules. And so it, you know, from something that started as trying to help, it really turned into, unfortunately, a situation that was being abused today.
Yeah, in the past, though, I mean, the city's tried a number of ways to accommodate. You do have accessible parking spaces. Tell us about those.
Right. So since 2005, we've more than tripled the number of accessible parking spaces. So we went from approximately 45 in, say, 2005 to 180 today. And then we have another 20 planned. That 20 won't be exactly inside the central business district, but very close to it in Midtown and in the new East Downtown area, which is rapidly growing thanks to the new Dynamo Stadium. But that number has dramatically improved.
And those spaces are spaces, they're designated, they have, what are all the fixtures that are assigned to those spaces?
Right, so each one of those spaces is, first of all, the appropriate size, appropriately marked, gives plenty of access space for vans or vehicles with people with accessible
So they may be
needs.
a little wider, and
Correct.
they will have space reserved next to them that's
Right.
crossed out so that
you have room to get in and out of your vehicle. Again, each of the spaces is marked on the pavement itself, as well as available signs in front of those spaces. Now, the accessible spaces, those 180 spaces that we have today, do not have any meters. There's no time limits that are enforced in those spaces at all. And so tripling those number of spaces and the additional spaces we have planned in the future, we feel gives adequate, more than adequate space available for the community.
Okay, but as Tina pointed out, that a lot of people in the community have been frustrated because they haven't been able to find parking when they need it. We'll talk about the reasons for that and what the city's doing to remediate right after we take a break here. So please stay tuned. Important information to follow on Focus on Abilities. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden, your host. We're here today with Dan Pagel from the City of Houston Parking Division and Tina Williams from the Houston Commission on Disabilities. Don, how many spaces again are there that are actually meeting the standards of accessible spaces in downtown Houston?
We have 180 spaces today.
Okay, so that's quite a few. But in addition to that, people who have the placards and the tags, or the tag, can park in any off-street parking. That won't accommodate some people with disabilities who drive a wheelchair accessible van and they need the additional space, but it may accommodate some people who have ambulatory issues, maybe not wheelchair users, but at least those who have difficulty getting in and out of their car or can only walk short distances. Now, the problem with that is that we find others who are using those spaces, right?
Right. That has always been a problem, and the City of Houston has stepped up enforcement of that. In the legislative session prior to this last one, the state increased the fine for parking in an accessible space without the appropriate placard or plate to $500. The City of Houston has increased their fine as well from the previous $205 that we had previously to $500.
Wow.
So we're pretty serious about it.
Do we know how many of those tickets are being given over any given period of time?
I don't have that number handy right now, but it is a sizable number, and partially because we have a wonderful volunteer force that comes into Parking Management Division and goes through an extensive training process and then is certified to be able to issue that particular infraction. So they can issue a citation for someone parking in an accessible space without the appropriate placard or plate.
Tina, have you any friends who are certified volunteer parking enforcement folks?
I do indeed. They actually, the chair of the commission is one of those volunteer.
That's Miss Calvo, right?
Miss Calvo. And, you know, sometimes it makes you feel a little better.
It makes you
give
feel
that.
good because you can give a ticket for
Right.
$500 to one of those jokers that
Exactly.
shouldn't be parked in that space, right?
Exactly.
Now, the issue of how one gets the card or the license plate is also tied to this, and I think it's an issue we shouldn't skip by, because in order to qualify, one has to be disabled according to some fairly strict standards that are established in the rule, the regulation, and the law. And theoretically speaking, at least, a person should have a mobility impairment that prevents them from traveling a great distance or makes it difficult for them to do so unless they have the aid of a wheelchair, a walker, or some other devices. So we see people jumping out of their cars and running into the store who are parked in those spaces, and yet they seem to have these placards hanging from their windows or from their mirrors. Tina, how does that happen?
Well, it could be the use of placards, you know, for like taking grandma to a store or taking mom somewhere, and mom's not in the car, but they're still utilizing the placard as though it's like a benefit to hang this placard there.
So in other words, they're grabbing their mom's placard and going shopping.
Exactly, using that like as a golden ticket to get front row parking.
Well, that doesn't seem right. Actually, I've seen delivery people who have those things, and made some inquiries one time and discovered they got it online, one of the placards. So it's possible to abuse, I guess, any good thing. And what's happened here in the city of Houston is we have people, according to the newspaper, who actually work for the court system or the city, who ordinarily would pay like their co-workers to park in a garage, who've somehow acquired one of these placards from a family member or perhaps by other means, and they park all day for free.
Mm-hmm. And that is an ongoing problem. One of the reasons that we have tightened up security or tightened up enforcement here on the parking areas is there's a number of issues involved here that you've gone through here. You know, one is, as Tina mentioned, every time one of these placards is issued, they get 2 of them. And sometimes they'll give it to a family member that has no disability, and they're using that, and that is not appropriate. HPD can require that they show the placard and the ID that shows whether or not they are the one that actually has the legal right to use that placard. If they don't, they confiscate the placard. The other issue is that in the central business district in downtown, each employer is responsible for making sure that they offer and have available parking for all of their employees. Some of those employees do have disabilities and are using free parking all day long on the on-street parking. They should have access to a garage parking by their employer or those kinds of things, and are using on-street parking all day, every day. By increasing the restrictions on this parking, we free up that parking now for economic development and put the onus back on the employer. Providing this parking is not an issue of providing something more to somebody with a disability. It's providing appropriate access and the same kind of access that anybody else has.
Well, I guess the purpose of on-street parking, when you think about it, is not to accommodate people who are employees in the central business district, but to accommodate people who are coming there to purchase goods, engage in commerce, file applications, take care of other business, and they're not expected to be there all day. These spots are generally, in fact, I think the meters are timed to provide somebody an ample period of time to conduct that kind of business, generally 2 hours, right?
Correct, yes. It could be anywhere from 2 hours to, say, 3 or 4 in the downtown business district, and somewhere up to 10 hours in outlying areas. But you're absolutely right. On-street parking is designed as temporary parking or short-term parking for you to conduct your business, take care of business at a court, take care of business at a business, buy goods. And we need to increase that economic development in downtown. This makes sure that we're rotating those spaces on a much more fair basis.
And the employers, since they have the responsibility to provide parking for their employees, need to attend also to the responsibility for those employees who have disabilities.
Absolutely, and it almost smacks of not treating the employees with disabilities the same as they're treating everybody else by expecting that those employees can simply park on the street all day long and the employer doesn't have to pay for that parking.
Okay, Tina, you think we're beginning to find an answer to this problem?
I think we're going in the right direction.
Okay, we're going to talk about that when we come right back. We're going to take another short break. You all stay tuned. This is Focus on Abilities. You're watching Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden. We're here with Tina Williams and Dan Pagel. We're talking about parking for people with disabilities in the city of Houston. And there are some issues. We've got a bunch of disabled parking spots, more than ever before, 180, Don? 180 spots that are designated. And then in addition to that, there's a provision that people who have appropriate credentials can park in on-street parking. It used to be as long as they wish to be there, but because of the abuse that we've talked about, now we're going to have some new rules. Tina, the commission worked with the city to put together some new rules on parking that will actually benefit people with disabilities, you believe?
I do indeed.
What will it do?
Well, it'll give more than one person an opportunity to utilize this accessible space. It also cuts down on those who are taking advantage of this space.
Okay, and Don, how will it work?
So what we've done is we now offer any space in the city of Houston that is metered space. So in other words, a legal parking space in the city of Houston. If you have a accessible placard or plate, you have the ability to park there free of charge for one complete maximum turn of the meter. In other words, if it's a 2-hour meter, you have 2 hours at no charge. If it's a 3-hour meter, you have 3 hours at no charge. On top of that, unlike anybody else in the city, you then can pay for another cycle on that meter, whereas no one else can actually feed the meter and continue another cycle on the meter. So you have one meter cycle at no charge, and then you have the ability to pay for another meter cycle.
Oh, that sounds to me like a good solution. Even now, however, you have to be legally eligible for that parking. In other words, the placard must be one legally obtained, and you must be the person who's bearing it. It's not one that belongs to a family member, one that you've got over the internet or from a child or anything else.
Right.
The benefit to that, Tina, you believe, is that more people will have the opportunity to find parking downtown.
Correct.
And Don, the compromise is that people can actually extend the parking in that space, unlike spaces that where a person using those credentials are not parked.
Correct. So it gives a little added benefit, I think, to it. We also, to really make it simple, over the next couple of weeks, we'll be announcing a brand new program that allows any parker to be able to pay for their parking through a cell phone application. And so now you have a situation where somebody with accessible credentials can pull into a parking space, park there for the 2 hours, say, on the maximum on the meter, and know that they're getting close to that limit. They can actually go onto their application and park for another 2 hours without ever having to go back to the vehicle.
So if they're down at Metro making an application for disability rides, for example, and they're stuck in a line, it takes more than 2 hours to get through the line, rather than have to get out of line and go back. If they have this application on their smartphone, they can just pay and extend their parking right there.
Absolutely.
That's
be
very
very,
cool.
very easy.
That is very cool. So evidently the city is really working together on this. I've heard the mayor talk about it. She's personally concerned about it. Tina, have you all visited with the mayor about this?
We have. That's pretty much how it came up. We had some complaints, and we just talked to the mayor about it.
And with her leadership, then we have the parking division's always been concerned about it, but now we have HPD is actually, as I understand it, being more aggressive than they ever have been about enforcing the rules as it relates to those placards. They've actually taken people and given them tickets.
Not only citations, but confiscate the placards. If they find someone that is not eligible for that placard, or that placard is not actually assigned to that person, they take the placard. And if that person's using grandma's placard, then grandma just lost her placard. And that's not a great thing for grandma, but somehow somebody has to be accountable for the misuse and abuse of these placards.
Wow. Tina, do you believe this is really going to be the end solution, or do we still need to work on disabled parking in downtown Houston?
Well, I think that it's a step in the right direction. I don't think it's going to end, because there are always those who think that they're the exception to the rule.
So, but it'll help with the abuse.
Absolutely.
As far as parking is concerned, I suspect, based on the demographics, and we know how many wheelchair users there are in the Houston area. Many of them are not going downtown because they've been frustrated in the past not being able to park. We need to encourage them to try again now that we have some new rules.
Exactly.
And another issue, which we'll talk about this in a future show, I think, but that is the commercial parking lots. In addition to the on-street parking that the city provides, there are a bunch of buildings and lots in downtown Houston where people can pay to park. And in my experience and that of others, many of those lots don't provide appropriate accommodations for accessible parking.
Right, and I agree. There's still lots of work to be done, and as Tina mentioned, this is a great step, I believe, in the right direction. I don't think the accessible community has had any better advocate in office than Mayor Parker, and we get a lot of push from her to make sure that we're meeting the needs here. But there's still more work to be done.
In regard to these commercial lots, to the extent the city has maybe leases there or uses some of the spaces, is there an effort to assure that the appropriate number of spaces are being marked and reserved and so on?
The city has the ability through ordinance to address these issues. Some of those things are being addressed here shortly. There's some fairly major enhancements to what we call Chapter 26.
Okay. So if Don, if people have input, who should they contact? Who should they write?
So there's a couple of great ways to do that. The Houston311.org for our regular access to 311 allows you to make comments and give suggestions. You can also go to HoustonParking.org, which is our site for the Parking Management Division. And there is a spot there on our website that will allow you to make comments and suggestions, ask questions, and we can respond.
Okay, so it's general public, but you all scour the questions and can divide them up and make sure they're rooted to the person responsible for dealing with the issues. Tina, any contact information for the commission?
You just go on to the city's website and you go to the mayor's office for people with disabilities, and then you'll be able to click on Houston Commission on Disabilities.
Okay. Any other contact information, websites, phone numbers you want us to share with the public here?
Well, I think we've addressed, the city's 311 system is one of the best in the country.
Okay.
And so by calling 311 or going to houston311.org, you've got amazing access to every service within the city, and it's a great system that is available to all citizens.
Perfect. So Dan Pagel, thank you for being our guest here today on Focus on Abilities.
Thank you very much.
And Tina Williams, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And please give our regard to your fellow members of the Houston Commission on Disabilities.
I will.
Okay, I want to thank all of you for watching Focus on Abilities. This has been a program about parking. It's an issue that's important to all Houstonians, but particularly for those with mobility impairments, and parking downtown is a challenge for all of us. But with these new rules, hopefully people with disabilities will be better accommodated and come on downtown. So, thanks again for watching Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden, your host. I hope you'll join us again next time, and I want to thank HTV for producing this show for us. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Focus on Abilities is brought to you by Tier Memorial Herman, redefining rehabilitation, removing barriers, re-enabling independence. In the ILRU Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.